Okay, we've had a rush of people coming in, so we'll give it about 30 more seconds before I get the introductions underway, and then we get to the core of today's webinar, which is some of the learnings that AMGC has observed in our engagement with industry over the last 9 months as part of the Industry Growth Program. So the purpose for today's meeting and webinar is to share with you insights that our two directors of the IGP program, Alan Lipman, Mark Peters, have observed, and to also get a bit of a head start on the year that's coming towards us. With the IGP and the IPO programs here to assist you, we thought it would be good to share those insights. I'll jump to the next slide. So joining us today on this webinar is Dr. Jens Goennemann, our Managing Director at AMGC, Mark Peters, our Referrals Director, and Alan Lipman, also our Referrals Director. Between the AMGC team and our directors, Jens and others, we've seen and worked with hundreds of IGP participants on helping them commercialise their technology or sort out their business requirements as they move towards commercialising their products and services. So a little bit about the AMGC and our program. AMGC is the peak body representing Australian manufacturing. We have over 4,400 members, between them employing 220,000 employees across all disciplines within manufacturing. Our experience encompasses co-invested projects, national support, advisory services, events and networking, media and writing services, and consulting services, some of which you may have benefited from as an IGP referral to AMGC's Connect program. Next slide. In this program, we offer a range of services spanning one-to-one, one-to-few, and one-to-many. And in those, everything from bespoke advice to assist you on your commercialisation journey, whether that be finding a problem in your supply chain, identifying collaborators, or just helping you with preparing your business documentation and other elements that you require as you prepare to access the funding stream of the IGP. One to few is more about exposing you to other things that occur within industry, opening up doors to facilities and knowledge that you may not be able to do on your own, whilst the one to many and one to one stuff is very much practical, showcasing what industry best practice looks like, along with other educational opportunities. So before we get into the issues and content of today, I'd just like to remind people that if you do have a question, please place it in the Q&A box at the top of the screen. We will take care of these if we have time at the end. If for some reason we run over, we will address those questions directly with you via email, and you can also reach out to us at connect@amgc.org.au. So to get straight into the content, I'll hand over to Jens, who will be moderating today. And again, if you have any questions, please place them up in the Q&A box. And thank you for taking the time for joining us. Thanks, Jens.
Perfect. Thanks, Tyson, for getting us started. And to all participants, such a pleasure to see so many dialing in and learn a bit about collective observations from our time as a delivery partner for the Industry Growth Program. It's a very hectic time of the year, all the events are piling up and the month is short. So again, much appreciated. The collective learnings when interacting with the two gentlemen who are very experienced manufacturers through their lifetime as well, Alan and Mark, Alan Lipman, Mark Peters, we learned from them that they see a pattern of what is being seen out there. And Alan, in alphabetic order, I will start with you giving us some example. But the pattern which we have seen are supply chain gaps, unclear customer value, inconsistent marketing, operational issue, slow, opaque external systems that delay processes, and last but not least, internal misalignment and difficult governance conversations. Who couldn't relate to that? Alan, handing it over to you, give us a little bit tales from the road, and then please share with your colleague Mark where he sees issues and back it up with maybe some anecdotal evidence.
Sure thing. Thanks very much, Jens, and thank you everybody for joining us today. I'm very happy to be chatting to you about what I've learned on the road for the last 6-7 months. 80% of my customers are pre-revenue. So they're very much startup companies. And when I sit down and talk to them, the things I'm concerned about is how quickly is it going to take you to get a minimum viable product to market? Because until you actually sell something, you don't actually have a business. So speed to market's important. That's going to require you to stop iterating at some point in time, because I see it time and time again that people believe they must have the perfect product to take to the market, and that's not the case. You need to get a product into the market and have the market help you for, evaluate your product. They'll tell you whether it's working, not working, what improvements they want. You will never be able to address all the issues you think that need to be addressed. So speed to market's important. The second thing I think is, why do you get out of bed every day? You've got to look at the fact that you've got to ensure that you're making enough money out of what you're doing to get out of bed. So margin is important. How you get your margin is important. How you set your pricing is important. And you don't want to leave money on the table, and you don't want to give anything away for free. So again, I tend to work with my clients in that respect, in terms of how do we facilitate the right price to market, how do we raise our margins, how do we work on those sorts of things. So very fundamental issues about speed to market, making sure you're making enough profit out of what you're doing, and once you've set your margin and set your profit, how can you manage those without necessarily playing with pricing. So again, looking at things like working on supply chain, local supply chain, growing your business, growing the number of items that you're making, scaling is where you're going to save money, and you can build your margins by doing things like that. So very quickly, they're the sort of 2 or 3 or 4 points, Jens, that I think are important. Speed to market's the key one.
Thank you very much, Alan, for taking off. Mark, can you add from your observations what you see there in addition to what Alan shared with us?
Yeah, one of the things that I see quite often is that supply chain includes quite often supply out of China. And what we at AMGC try to do is champion local manufacture if possible. So we're able to supply lists of battery suppliers, composite manufacturers, PCB manufacturers, plastic injection molders, PLC integrators, automation companies, that sort of thing. And that's what we try and do with that supply chain side, and try and get people to look locally, and we'll give them that opportunity. Sometimes they do already look locally and found that that's much more expensive, but I think with a bit of support from AMGC, we can sort of resolve those issues. I find that that's one of the main issues there.
Terrific. Thank you, Mark. You mentioned China. I'm a big fan of China, which it seems to be counterintuitive of propagating manufacturing. And you didn't say anything contrary to that. China buys 41% of what we export. So learning from China is probably not the worst thing. The challenge for us is very often, and that leads me to the next slide. And Emilia, you can get over. Yeah, thank you. To strengthen a business proposition, the idea that we want to do more locally also means to be competitive. We can't compete we can't compete on pity. We need to be better, not cheaper. And that is why we need to have a valuable proposition, a business proposition, to compete with China and other markets. Alan, you said 80% of your clients are pre-revenue, and you only have a business once you have a paying customer. Or in other words, Peter Drucker once said, the purpose of a business is to create a customer. Starting with you, Alan, I'm sure Mark can add to that. Strengthen your business proposition. Can you give a bit more into detail that we can really take the turning point from a good idea into revenue and money on the manufacturer's bank?
Absolutely. Jens, I think I've seen it a couple of times to some of my clients now. They all with their technology, they're all solving some sort of a problem, and I agree with that. The question I have, and I've raised this a couple of times with people, is what is the problem you are solving? Where does it rank in all the problems that a business faces from, say, 1 to 10? Where does your problem solving rank? And you've got to be working on a first order problem to be solving that problem to make yourself relevant. If you've got a problem solving capability and you're only solving a 10th order problem, you'll never sell it because that 10th order problem will never rise up the chain to number one. There'll always be a different number one taking over. So I think at this stage, you really need to be sure that what you're doing is in fact solving a problem that the market wants you to solve. I've seen it a couple of times where people are now doing research on what their problem is that they're solving, but they've spent 3 years developing a product. And I don't think they're doing it the wrong way around. You work out what the problem is you want to solve first, and you build your product to do that, not the other way around. So I'd say you really have to be very clear about the problem that you're solving.
So you're very much coming from the value proposition, which is worth a customer's coin. Mark, do you wish to amend to that? Any observations from you?
Yeah, I found that quite a lot of my clients don't fully understand their place in the market. They haven't done their research on their competitors to make sure that their value proposition is clearly superior to other people in the market. And what I suggest they do is they build a matrix of their particular items of excellence and compare that with the opposition and do an index chart and be able to use that for verifying their value proposition when they're out there, and also making sure that any claims that you make of your value proposition you've had independently tested either by research institutions or whatever, just to be able to sort of say, yes, my product is better because of this particular factor. The other thing is the letters of support, pilot trials, early offtake agreements. Well, they're among the strongest tools companies use when engaging with investors and assessors in 2025. But it also is important to make sure you have all that ready if you're going to apply for an IGP grant, because that's part of the project plan that you need to submit and then talk about in your various criteria that require information in that regard. So make sure you've got all that ready for that particular objective.
Mark, you mentioned collaboration with research partners. What are your observations? Question to both of you, whoever wants to start. And that obviously goes to the DNA of AMGC's propagating be better, not cheaper. How hard or easy do you find your clients to work with research partners, and where are success stories?
Well, you've got to a degree, take them dragging and kicking to see the research organisations, but when they do, they recognise very quickly the value that research organisation can add to the development of their product, and it's been quite successful in a number of cases. I can't recall any exactly offhand, but yeah, quite a few have been very have benefited from that association.
Alan, your view, and you have been the CEO, Managing Director of Roma Engineering for a very long time. Any experience from your own vita?
Oh, very much so, Jens. I've got a couple of clients that I've introduced to CSIRO in different levels because their proposition was to resolve very serious technical issues that only a research institute has the, if you like, the strength and the power and knowledge to do. So in introducing them to CSIRO to resolve their issues, that's taken them forward a great deal. They worked with their own engineers to get to a certain point. They encountered significant problems as to how the technology was going to work. And then obviously you need to be able to pass them on to somebody that can give them assistance. And I've done that a couple of times and it's worked extremely well.
Any obstacles? Because I find for small companies, and AMGC prides itself to be the voice for the small end of town. Do small companies have the bandwidth to do that?
Oh, absolutely. Again, the two organisations that I introduced, one was a sole trader essentially, and he's made good ground with CSIRO in helping him develop a particular material that he needed for his product. And the other one was a very long-established, well-experienced engineering firm that was trying to develop a new technology that didn't exist in the market. And again, they're working extremely effectively with CSIRO to do that. So CSIRO is very open to how they work with companies, even very small companies and an individual in one case. So I don't think that there are any issues that would stop somebody from getting that benefit.
Yeah. Mark, any observations from your end, challenges of uptake of collaboration outside the company with research organizations, universities, collaboration spaces?
Yeah, the only problem I've found with them is speed to get the research done. It can take some time. You have to recognise that and be, observe the need that of the universities or research institutions to carry out that work with their people.
Terrific, thank you. I have now discovered the option that I can drive the slides myself. So next topic, improving operational performance. Gentlemen, can I get your insights from your observation? Where are obstacles? Where are success stories? Where's the good advice from your time as an industry partner organization, but also from your manufacturing life in the first place?
Thanks, Jens. Look, I think improving operational performance covers a lot of ground. There's lots of ways that we can review this, but two specific instances. I've got clients in Western Australia. I've got one client that was looking to expand their operations to do contract manufacturing. And I had another client who was looking for a contract manufacturer. I'll put the two of them together. They've got on so famously well that they now have moved in, well, the one customer's moved in with the other customer, and they're working collaboratively to build both their businesses, which I think is a terrific outcome. So that's one way you can do things. The other way that you can do things is I've got another client I'm working on. He's developed a pharmaceutical product, and there's several places along his value chain of manufacturing where he can actually sell the product. So he can sell it in three different stages. And so I'm working with him to work out how do we go to market now so that he has the ability to sell his product at any stage of the production cycle to whoever might require it. And so there's lots of ways to look at those sorts of issues, but they're two that come to mind.
Terrific. Mark, anything in addition to that?
Yeah, we come across quite a few companies that are pretty early stage, about TRL6, that are using very much manual methods to develop their product or manufacture their product. And what we can do is offer some paid time with a machinery equipment manufacturer, a machinery equipment advisor, a lean manufacturer or a lean consultant, and get them to consult with these people and find out what machinery equipment they need, get recommendations on that, find out how to have a better layout of their plant and operation, and how to introduce lean, etc. So we've got some funding, limited, but we've got some limited funding to help people in those regards in terms of realistic facility design and equipment timelines.
Terrific, thank you. And I would like to also flag with our audience that we will have time to address a couple of questions. So to make it a bit more interactive and not also so much mid-aged male-dominated, I would hope we can hear a little bit more from you. So get ready, post your questions. I have them ready. Send them out. I'm very happy to have that being addressed. I hope our conversation will provoke a few of them. Next topic.
Just, if I could jump in very quickly, one of the
please
like
jump in anytime.
Yeah, thank you. One of the other things I'd like to mention is, I think if you're going to go to market and you're going to increase your manufacturability of your product and those sorts of things, it's good not to try and reinvent the wheel. And you should invest money when you need to invest money. So a good example is I had a client that was looking to expand his manufacturing facilities. He bought a piece of land. He was prepared to invest several $1 million to build a new factory to increase his scale of what he was doing. And I said, well, why would you invest $2 million without ensuring that your market is actually there? you're much better off offloading your potential increase to a contract manufacturer in the short term, who you can ramp up with as you grow. And then when you know your market is solid, go and invest your money and build your factory. But once you've ramped these guys up, you can ramp them back down again. So it made a lot of sense for him to do that. So he has followed that advice, and I know that's what he's currently doing. So again, invest money where you need to invest money. Don't try and reinvent the wheel.
And the way I would translate it is plan and think with the end in mind. Very often we see bottom-up endeavors in Australia rather than with the end. At the end, at the very end, is a paying customer. So if you backwards engineer from there, that is where you need to spend your money. There's no point to deliver bottom-up any propositions to the market, which then we find out once the money is spent, nobody wants to buy. So I think that is good advice.
Correct. That's the field of dreams approach there, Jens. Spend it and they will come. That definitely is not the case.
There are very few exceptions to that, but in the order, like I have never demanded an iPhone in my life, so I'm glad that somebody produced it for me. But these are very, very big exceptions. I think starting with a customer and having an off-take customer is probably the way to go.
Yes.
Mark, before I go to the next slide, anything else, or shall we go into supply chain readiness?
Let's go into supply chain readiness.
Terrific. And again, to the audience, fire with your questions. And if anybody needs to interject something very, very urgently, please do by all means. Supply chain readiness. Mark, starting here with you, if I may. Why do we put this onto our slide deck? Why do we put it in our presentation on observations and getting ready for 2026? What have you learned, and where are the challenges?
Once again, supply chain invariably is from overseas sometimes, which needs to be, if possible, made local, just so that you shorten the lead time for a supply product. At the same time, you need to develop your bill of materials, your BOM. You need to have a good ERP system which will record that supply chain readiness and that supply chain capacity. And then what we try and do is recommend local networks, local suppliers, etc., to do those very things. And then basically we look at their BOM, we sort of say, okay, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? There are a lot of suppliers in Australia that could do that for you.
Terrific. Alan.
Yeah, Jens. So what I've seen a couple of times is you got good tech. You've been building it on your own, in your own little workshop, and you can maybe make five bits of your product every 3 days, and suddenly somebody's going to give you an order for 80. You can't be supplying like that. So I think having a local supply chain is important because, as Mark said, it reduces your timelines. But at the same token, it also controls things like your costs, because you're not worried about foreign exchange payments and those type of things. You're not worried about your import duties or export duties out of the country where the goods are coming from, and shipping times and shipping delays and all the other things that go along with buying from overseas. So I think that's very important. Scaling is important, and also your design for manufacture is important. So you might be able to make a lot of things by hand, and that's great. But when you have to scale, you need to be able to do it quickly and efficiently, and you want to be able to get hold of all your components, or as many of your components as you can locally, because it just takes the headaches out of it.
Design to manufacture sounds a bit like a buzzword, which you'll be thrown by from a highly paid consultants. Unpack that for us a little bit more. What does it mean?
Sure. So design to manufacture really is about designing the product so it can be built easily and consistently and at scale. A good example is I've got a customer now that's using pressed metal to manufacture a little box that he puts his PCBs in and puts it all together. He doesn't need to have a stainless steel box to put his PCBs in. There are other methodologies much quicker and cheaper for him to produce the same holding thing for his PCBs, and so we're looking at different avenues for him to take that down the road. And rather than him have those individually made one at a time, we're looking at to get them made in volume in a different material and supplied a lot quicker to him. So when you design your product, you design it functionally to make sure it works, but at the same time, it's got to be fit for purpose in the long term so you can manufacture them. I've got another company, one of my clients, he's built a huge box that's sort of this big by this big, and he's tested his technology and it absolutely positively works, but that's not an MPV. That's not his minimum viable product. He can't sell it when it's this big by this big. So he's now working on scaling it down to something a bit more this sort of size, shoebox size. And that's what he's working on. So that's what we mean by design for manufacture. So you build it so that it can be manufactured quickly, easily, cheaply, using common parts, using common materials that are easily sourced.
Thank you. Whilst Mark is thinking of a practical example from his observation, I want to share one, and again goes to the point of planning with the end in mind. One of our rockstar manufacturers was planning his product and the box and packaging size that he could precisely fit it on a Euro pallet, and then again ship it to the customers with in an economically viable fashion. I thought this was really clever, and when he showed us the boxes and how this all fit on a Euro pallet and how it hasn't done that before, he wasted a lot of space and increased transport costs. Mark, anything designed to manufacture from your end? Otherwise, I go to slide number 9.
You gave the exact example that I was going to give, Jens, and I know the client we're talking about. And they were able to increase the number of items on a pallet by 20%, which reduced shipping costs, a whole range of issues. So yeah, it's a very important aspect of manufacturing sort of supply chain.
Yeah, well, it is very rude of the moderator to steal the examples of the panelists. So my apologies, Mark, but it confirms he is certainly a rockstar manufacturer amongst us. A Queenslander, by the way.
Yes,
all righty. All right. Now, something also with where manufacturers struggle in the marketing. And we addressed it a little bit earlier, who eventually ends up buying this. I'm starting with you, Alan. Why is that important, and what have you learned? What can you share with us?
Marketing is very important, and really fundamentally, I think everybody needs a pretty decent website. Websites are not something that you set and forget. I think people do that. They build a website and then don't touch it for years. You need a very viable website. Your website's going to be your best marketing tool. It works 365 days of the year. And it works every hour of every day. It works locally, it works internationally, and it's a business getter. And in my experience, if you spend time and money and effort in building the right website, keeping it up to date, keeping it current, and facilitating the changes in there to get you the sort of inquiries that you want, it's very effective. So one of the first things I did when I came to Romar Engineering, when I started there over 9 years ago now, was to rebuild the website from scratch. Hadn't been touched in a long time. Typically, we were getting 2 or 3 inquiries a month. I set a goal of 10 inquiries a week from our new website. We very quickly exceeded 10 inquiries a week. We worked out that they weren't the sort of inquiries that we exactly wanted, so we kept changing the messaging till we got the exact inquiry we wanted. And it settled down to probably about 25 decent inquiries a month from there. And from that, we would convert quite readily the work that we wanted out of those inquiries. So that can be your best friend. It's a lot cheaper than hiring a business development manager, although some businesses require face-to-face and do that sort of stuff. But I would highly, highly recommend that you professionally build a website as your first starting point.
Well, you're just a tech-savvy Generation Z operator, Alan. We didn't grow up with IT. Is it easy to do that? Are there new tools out there? Or in other words, is there any excuse not to have a website anymore? Mark, also happy for you to jump in.
Yeah, any company that I come across, I ask them what their PR and social media development is, whether going down that track, whether they've started or finished, or whether they're happy with it. And if they say, no, I would like some advice on that, I always refer them to Tyson, our colleague in Sydney, who then has a chat with them about where they're at, where they need to be, and where they need to go. I've come across a couple of manufacturers here in Brisbane who have used social media very, very effectively, even for a manufactured product. I remember one company about 6-7 years ago up in Cairns used Instagram to promote his truck-mounted bodies. He started getting orders from the Middle East and inquiries from America, etc. So social media is far-reaching. You don't use trade magazines or that sort of style of advertising anymore. It's all about you generating a pull from your social media and PR people.
Yeah. Look, AMGC headquarters is certainly also to support Tyson, Alan, and Mark. We have one colleague, her name actually in the team is called TikTok, because one of her videos reached way more than 10 million views. So we know what we're talking about, and we can only strongly support the idea of getting the message out there. Now, coming from these flamboyant topics to more down to as operational matters, operations, finance, and IGP realities. When it comes to finance, Mark, you're a chartered accountant, aren't you? Shall we start with you? What is your advice, and then handing over to Alan after?
Sorry, I'm not a chartered accountant. That requires it's a financial accountant. I'm more a management accountant. But capital, 50% of the people I speak to that I've come across over the 60 or 70 people I've spoken to since March, 50% have said they need access to capital. We did a very comprehensive and successful webinar on capital raise, and every time somebody says, give me some information, I say, please, I send them a copy of their capital raise seminar, and then invite them to talk with our chair, Paul Cooper, briefly about where they are at the moment and where they need to go. And Paul has been very successful in giving them some information in their direction and seeking to raise that capital. Letters of support and offtake agreements accelerate everything. I agree, particularly if you're writing an IGP grant application, you need that to support it. And navigating the IGP. If you're talking about grants, that's something I've got a bit of expertise in. I'm quite happy to give advice on the project plan. I've got a list of headings that I suggest you recommend you use to prepare your project plan, which is a pivotal document for an IGP grant. And then from that, you look at the criteria, and that's the other pivotal documentation area that I'm happy to sort of give some general advice on. Only general, I can't get detailed, but I can give some general advice on that.
Thank you. And sticking with the IGP reality, sending over in a second to Alan. I stand corrected, but you refer to Paul, our chairman. He's a chartered accountant, but you're an accountant, Mark. So here you go. That sticks with you. Alan, anything from your end in what increases the realities, the chances to lend an IGP grant ultimately?
Sure. I think at the end of the day, you have to have a realistic view of what your business is and how you can achieve growth and sales. So I'm a great believer in cash flow, and once again, cash flow. And however you maintain that, however you manage that, that's incredibly important. So I'd say you need to find yourself a good CFO or a good solid accountant who can work with you on helping you manage your money. When you're a startup, everything's going out the door. I realize that, which is why I say you need the shortest route from that to putting a product in the marketplace, because you need to start getting money back in the door. It's not always good to have your hand out looking necessarily for grants and capital all the time, because even the people providing the grant or providing the capital are going to require you to show them where the money's coming from. So I would say look for somebody that you can trust in helping you put together your cash flow planning. I've always operated, when I've run companies, on the basis of a 13-week rolling cash flow. It's just a discipline thing. And I would highly recommend that you do that as a starter, because you're going to require it for the whole of running your business, no matter when you start from a single operator right through to employing tens or hundreds of people, you're going to require to manage your cash flow. So highly recommend that you get somebody on board who you can work with and talk to about doing that.
From AMGC's own experience, one of the criteria for other programs in which we had or still have funding in regional co-investment funds, our requirement was always we wanted to see half of the cash for any project coming from the participants, and that was for us the standout quality KPI that everybody who puts the money where their mouth is really sincere about it. And then comes to other things, whatever the fund intends to do. In the IGP case of the 7 priority areas, of which AMGC covers a few, and in the case of other programs, whether it's about wind energy or manufacturing ecosystem or the 6 national manufacturing priorities a couple of years ago, that was then something else we checked. But having the money to play and demonstrate that in a project application, whether it's the IGP or was or is AMGC, is always a very important criteria. Now, let's stay with navigating the IGP for a second. Ultimately, and we are an industry partner organization for the Industry Growth Program, ultimately, we want our clients, our interaction partners to be successful, to be a recipient for the IGP. Any other wisdom from you, Mark and Ellen, which increases chances to be successful? What we have covered here.
With the IGP application, it's all about innovation, and you have to really, in criteria 1, describe that properly. And that's what I always sort of zero in on initially, and that's what the IGP program's looking for. The other thing that, a bit of advice that both myself and the PAs I've worked with is that quite a lot of the people we deal with are very much entrepreneurial, and they come with a product and they want to attack 10 different markets. And as Alan said, revenue, cash flow. We tell them to focus on just 1, maybe 2 markets for that product, and exhaust those markets first, and that will give you the cash flow to develop the other markets as you go forward. So you've got to bring focus to your product, to your market, and to your potential sales to make sure that you get some early revenue. Even if you want to improve the product down the track, get the basic product out there, generate revenue, and keep that cash flow going. And therefore the capital aspect or requirement lessens somewhat.
Terrific. Ellen, final remarks to
Sure, yeah. Thank you. Look, I think the first protocol for our IGP participants should always be their business advisor. I mean, that's what the business advisors are there for. The business advisors can refer you to the IPOs such as us, as in AMGC, or a relevant IPO to you in whatever sphere that you're working in, because we work in various verticals, the industry partner organizations. So I would say, in the first instance, speak to your business advisor about these issues, and then hopefully he'll refer you to the correct IPO who can give you a hand. And from our perspective, Mark is our IGP expert, and I would always defer to him.
Terrific. Thank you, Ellen and Mark. I'm handing over to our Director, Media and Government Relations, Tyson, who is headquarters side, the one who manages the IPO. And he will also moderate the Q&A, so keep the questions coming, folks. Tyson, from your observation, MetaView, 5 winning manufacturer traits.
Thanks, Jens, and thanks, Mark and Alan. I think if we sort of summarize it all, manufacturers that succeed make trust easy. You know, they gain the trust of their customers, they gain the trust of their supply chain, and that can be through many different paths. But your best advocate to land that is by talking about your current customers. If you're succeeding with them, don't hide that success under a bushel. Put customer testimonials up. Ask them if you can put their logo on your website as a customer. Lean on those people to help tell your story and win more business. Too often, some manufacturers hide that and they shouldn't be afraid to. There are obviously circumstances around defence where you can't disclose those things, but you can also write case studies that don't disclose who your customer is, but still tell everybody how you solved their problem. Manufacturers that work well with customers make that first step easy to do business with. In the media and comms world, if you're easy to contact, easy to talk to, and you solve a problem without too much hassle, media will continue to come back to you. And you're given the first opportunity at that business or opportunity. So make those first steps easy. It could be that you pilot a program with them, or you work alongside them to define a problem that they haven't been able to solve. That really does help you earn both trust but business. I think our chair is a big advocate of planning your operations early. Although we don't have a crystal ball, having a view over what might come up over the horizon is always important. And AMGC's research also said that too many people get stuck working in the business rather than on the business. So carve out those little bits of time where you can take a moment to look at your operations and plan for what's coming. The fourth point is that you're planning your capital alongside your growth. Easy to say in theory, harder to do in practice, but growing broke is a really difficult position to be in, and we see it sometimes. So to Alan's point, 13-week rolling financials, understanding where your costs are, but also where they may come from. That's a big one. You can trip yourself up there. And it'll lead into a question that I'm going to ask you shortly, Jens, but governance and internal management, having your internal stakeholders buy into your plans or your aspirations, making sure that they're well briefed, looking at those things where you might trip yourself up within the business by not taking on these governance, shareholder or other issues early. When everybody agrees, it makes things a lot easier so that you can actually tackle your customer's problem. So there's sort of the 5 things I think in a very helicopter view we've noted both through this program, but in the 10 years of AMGC operations. And with that, I'll probably jump into the Q&A, of which we have a few. So I'll just pick them off in order.
And while you do that, Tyson, what I will do is putting that slide up, which then allows to take note whom you want to reach out to potentially as a follow-up as well. Tyson, back to you. Q&A.
Absolutely. So we've got Michael from MK Pro who is, in his question, struggling with the balance between local supply chain and managing costs. So maybe, Alan, you've tackled this issue a few times, so I might defer this question to you. Running and owning a business and trying to do the right thing by securing local supply chains, what strategies have you deployed in trying to contain that, or at least evaluating the true cost of your supply chain?
Look, it's a difficult question, and we all want to support local supply chain. We all want to, Australian made, Australian owned, be Australian, but at the same time, we are all trying to run a business and make a profit and make money, because that's the whole purpose of running a business. So I would say to you, you make best endeavors locally to find a supply chain partner. You evaluate that partner on numerous bases, such as, quality, price, availability of stock, how quickly they respond, all sorts of things. But sometimes that's going to work well for you, and sometimes it just isn't. So I have no issue in deferring to overseas suppliers if that's what it takes for you to get your product out to market, because you will make the assessment as what's required for your business. And I think that's the most important thing. I think you need to have more than one source of supply. So I would always say try and facilitate some local manufacturer if you're looking to lean on overseas manufacture. But have more than one source of supply would be my key element. And how you go about that's up to you. But there's nothing wrong with using, as Jens says, China, Taiwan, Vietnam, India. They're all good supply places. They're all recognized supply places, and most of them are very hungry for your business in any event. IP is the big question when you're using overseas suppliers about how much IP you're giving away or potentially giving away. So that needs to be cognizant in what you're trying to do as well.
Thanks, Al. We've also got a question from Oliver. It's a two-pronged question, but I think I might even tackle this one. Oliver's asked about a list of resources or regs in setting up a manufacturing facility, and can we also talk about some of the common errors? I think one of the things that we've noted, and this is through one of our partners, Manufacturing Catalyst, is that some manufacturers think that the best solution to a capacity or capability problem is a new machine. More often than not, that's not the case if you consult an expert early. A small fee for someone to come in and take a helicopter view of your operations and actually define the problem and then work out that you don't need to drop CapEx into a new machine, but rather tweak or optimize what you currently have to solve the issue is an easy mistake to make. So we do have people as part of the IPO and AMGC's offering that can help in those areas. Oliver, I would suggest that you have a quick chat to your advisor and ask if you can be referred through on that particular area, because I think Manufacturing Catalyst would be the perfect person to have a chat to in those two areas, specifically around the regs and also those common errors. Jens, I've got a question for you rolling on to the next one. We talked about governance early, but that's also aligned with being able to raise capital and funding. So in your experience, you've been to a couple of manufacturers now. What are the things at a helicopter level you would suggest that manufacturers seeking funding need to address at a governance level first?
As far as your question relates to governance, one of my questions is, how are you governed? Then you discover whether it's a family business or it's a family business who is challenged by intergenerational operation and even wealth transfer. And what I find helpful, and from my own experience, because I find myself in this role here and there, is whether you have a board or you have an advisory board. One is very rigid governance with governance requirements in a case of a board with certain fiduciary duties, but in an advisory board, you are more free. But you can get out of a group think, family think, and being externally challenged and bring experience gained outside your comfortable ecosystem to the table, which I find always very valuable. It's about the unknown unknowns with which you maneuver through the world, and have never thought of it when somebody else with a bit of life in manufacturing experience comes around the table. I find this very helpful. The other thing when it comes to the word governance is that we have, in fact, two governance organizations in Australia, the Australian Institute of Company Directors, which is a more known organization compared to the Governance Institute of Australia. However, the Governance Institute of Australia, for example, and I'm affiliated to both organizations, so I'm just describing a difference. AICD is for the top 50 largest companies, and the Governance Institute of Australia gives a lot of governance micro-credentials, which, by the way, are also certified and acknowledged as those, who can give you smaller governance insights as you see fit, as you need them, rather than going through the very long and expensive company director course, which is a great product. However, there are other ways and lower hurdles to get governance expertise and advice.
Great. Thank you, Jens. Mark, a question for you. You've read, seen, evaluated, drafted and written a range of different grant applications over the many years you've been advising manufacturers. What are your key observations where people, I suppose, could improve those documents, or how can they make them better? And I think one of the things might be seeking external help where necessary, but what have you seen and observed over the past few months?
Probably the most important thing I looked at when I was assessing project applications was the value proposition. We've talked about that previously, but you have to make sure you've really refined your value proposition and you've assessed the competitive aspects of the market and overcome those and be able to sort of provide a product which nobody else can compete with. You've got a, what they call a USP. You've got to make sure that that value proposition is correctly enumerated. And secondly, making sure you've got a market for your product and be able to demonstrate you've got a market, whether by research or whether by getting letters of support or letters of interest from potential customers once that product is being manufactured and going to market. So it's a question of saying, what's the problem at the moment with the existing product in the marketplace, and how is your solution better? What is your solution, and how does it overcome that problem? And they're the main things that I look for when I first look at a project application. And of course, you have to look at the financial aspects as well. Do they have the financial backing to be able to sort of carry through? Because you don't want to become a headline in 2 years' time saying government-backed organisation fails. It does happen, but by the same token, assess that financial viability and make sure that you're comfortable with and that's what the project reviewer will look at, that they're comfortable with the amount of financial backing you've got. So they're the main things. Be honest. Don't be too passionate about your product. It's very easy to be passionate about it. Be very cold and calculating and saying, this is what I've got, this is what it's going to do to the market, etc. So a number of different areas, and the criteria that the government asks for in the IGP application cover all those aspects. So you've got to make sure that, although repetitive sometimes, you've got to keep repeating the same questions or the same answers over and over again, but it is necessary to get a good score on each one of those criteria.
Great. Thanks, Mark. Got a question that came through from Tanya, and it's about testing of products before they bring it to market and research partners. So I might tackle this one. Tanya, research partners are wide and varied. It can be anyone from a university to the CSIRO or other institutions that don't normally come to mind. They are your check and balance, and we would be more than happy to introduce you to anyone in our network that can help you pending your requirements. Obviously, if you're building electronic devices, then that would require a different skill set to, say, a food product. So feel free again to reach out to us on connect@amgc.org.au with more specifics, and Alan or Mark will be able to then point you in the right direction, or we can find an industry collaborator that might be able to help you test those products as well, because collaborating with industry is a pathway as well. If there aren't any other questions, I'll probably just do a very quick round robin before I pass to Jens for the final word before we wrap up. Again, just a reminder, if you need to contact AMGC, our email address is there below, and you'll be able to gain access to all of the team along with our collaborating network. But Alan, Mark and Jens, just a very quick headline thing. What would be the one thing that you would suggest manufacturers tackle as they prepare for 2026? I might start with Alan, if that's okay.
Oh, thanks for that. It's a very good question, Tyson. I think just ensure that you are solving a problem that needs to be solved. I think that's the key for me. Ensure that what you are going to bring to market is going to fix a problem that exists or enhance a situation that is problematic to people or whatever. I think that's the key for me, is ensure that you're putting your time, effort and money into solving a real problem.
Great. Mark?
Getting back to value proposition, I hate to say it, but that's the main thing that you have to develop and make sure that you've got nailed, and that you have a USP that nobody else can compete with, and that you are ready for market in terms of supply chain and finance.
And Jens, your one tip and the final word, if I may.
Oh gosh, what a pressure. I think we have heard a lot of very pragmatic and practical advice from our colleagues with a cold face and deeply embedded with our clients. I would like to lift it on a level or two higher. The reason we do this at AMGC with an extremely high retention rate in our team is the purpose and the purpose of why we exist. And our purpose is to transform Australian manufacturing. And we do that because we believe that manufacturing, the ability to make things, is what transforms the lucky country into a smart country. When looking backwards, manufacturing had a tough, and the road ahead is not an easy one. But the ability to make things is the ability of capable and competitive countries, especially those who either have run out of commodities and the luck that comes with it, or of countries which will run out of commodities or don't find a customer for that anymore. We will not find a customer for coal and gas in 10, 15, 20 years. There might be iron ore coming out of Africa. So manufacturing, without any doubt, will be more important and more acknowledged and more lucrative and prosperous than it is today. Take that, what we believe is certain, as your motivator to overcome all these challenges and stay with manufacturing, because that is the future for you, for your families, for the next generations to come. I also would like to thank you for engaging with AMGC, those who drink manufacturing every morning from the fire hose. And we are very grateful for the opportunity to work with the IPO and with the IGP&B and IPO and the partner organization. And please contact your advisor to be referred to us if you think there is more value in interacting with us. On that note, I also would like to thank you for participating on behalf of the AMGC team. We wish you all a very Merry Christmas and a great and fast start for 2026. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.